me drag it for so long. So thank you, Natasha. Um, you're blessed to deliver this. Everyone have a fantastic time. And please, you have time to ask questions. So feel free to just wait for her till the end and then ask her questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ma. Thank you for this great opportunity. And I trust that the Holy Spirit will actually lead us and reveal the things that He actually wants us to know. So I'll just share my screen and then we'll start from there. So before I actually share my screen, I was having a conversation with the Holy Spirit last night and just wondering to say, okay, what exactly do you really want me to share? Because it's only this year that I actually got to realize that I've been in a waiting season. I've been in like waiting seasons almost all my life. And every season comes with its own story. And I wasn't really sure which part of my story He actually wants me to share. And I guess it only like got to me yesterday. Like it's only yesterday that it actually hit me to say everything that I went through, everything that I experienced was actually meant for such a time as this. So to me, sharing this, having this class is actually a full cycle moment. This is actually a moment where God is just telling me to say, I wasn't punishing you. It wasn't a punishment. There wasn't something wrong with you, but then I was actually preparing you for something like this. So I actually feel so honored, and I thank God and I thank Mama as well for this opportunity. So let's start. So yes. Sorry. I'll first start with reading this verse, Psalms 40, verse 31. It has been like my anchor verse. Give me a minute. I'm so sorry about the background noise. Jaden is a little excited today, so you just have to bear with me. So Psalms 40, verse 31, it's in the TPT version, and it says, but those who wait for Yahweh's grace will experience divine strength. They'll rise up on soaring wings and fly like eagles, run their race without growing weary, and walk through life without giving up. And because this has been a verse that has actually encouraged me most of the time, I sat down and I was wondering to say, why did they mention eagle? Why didn't they mention elephant or lion or any other animal, even any other bird? Why did they actually like talk about eagles? So I was wondering to say, okay, so what's so special about the eagle? Why the eagle? My slides seem to be stuck. Sorry. So I actually had to like go on Google and look at the interesting facts about an eagle. And I actually found this interesting myth. I don't know if it's actually true, but then there's room for investigation. So the eagle has the longest lifespan among all the birds in the world. It can live up to 70 years, but to reach this age, the eagle must make a hard decision. And in its 40s, its long and flexible talons can no longer grab prey, which serves as food. So the talons are what the eagle actually uses to hunt. And without this, we know that if the talons are like, can no longer grab prey, it means that the eagle is either it dies or it actually has to like reach a decision where it actually has to choose between life and death. So its long and flexible talons can no longer grab prey, and then its long and sharp beak becomes bent. And we all know that for a bird to actually eat, it has to actually use its beak to actually click on the food for it to actually eat. I don't know if you can actually hear me. Is my mic okay? just check. Okay. Sorry, I'm just checking if the mic is actually okay. And I can't see the chat, so okay, I'll just go on. I'll just go on. Okay. Okay. So if it and then its beak becomes bent, which means it can't pick on its food, it can't eat anything. So it only has a choice of either dying or else making one of the hardest decisions in life, which is to actually go on 150 days process, a process or a journey of 150 days. So it requires the eagle to actually fly to its nest, to a nest, and actually stay there for 150 days, because at this point, its talons can no longer grab the prey, its beak is actually bent, and its wings, due to their thick feathers, become stuck to its chest and make it difficult to fly, which is actually a sign that it is actually dying anyway. So it has to actually make a decision whether to die or go through a transformation. I'm so sure you're actually wondering to say, why am I actually sharing all this? So I'll actually share towards the end. It actually makes sense as it gets towards the end. So this process requires the eagle to actually fly to a mountaintop and sit on its nest. And as I was reading, Google said that the only time that an eagle actually stays in its nest is actually the time that it is actually feeding its babies. And as soon as the babies are all grown, it doesn't actually stay in a nest anymore. It's actually mobile, it's everywhere. It doesn't stay to one nest compared to like the rest of the birds that we know. And then during this process, the eagle has to like knock its beak against a rock until it plucks it out. And this process is painful. You can imagine like you hitting yourself on a stone just to remove a beak. It's a painful process. It's not easy. It's not something that you can just like decide one day and say, you know what, I'll just do it anyway. It means that it actually has to actually decide to say, okay, I'm gonna go through this process. Come sun, come rain, I'll actually get through it because I actually want to live on. And then when it's new, and then it has to wait for its new talons to actually grow back. It means that it actually has to hit its beak as well as the talons on this rock until they break. And then it has to wait until the talons grow back. And then it uses these new talons to actually pluck out its old thick edge feathers, like pluck out one by one until all of it is gone and the new feathers grow back. And this is a process that takes about 5 months. And then after, that's when the eagle takes his famous flight of rebirth and lives for 30 more years. So from the 40 years and the 30 years, it means it can actually live up to 70 years. But for this eagle to actually reach 70 years, it has to go through a process. So why am I talking about this? So I had to share this to actually show us, to say what the eagle actually goes through is the same thing that we actually go through during our waiting season. So other birds, when looking at the eagle hitting its head on a rock or its beak on a rock, they will actually think, oh, why is this eagle punishing itself? Because they don't understand what this eagle is actually going through. They don't understand why it has to do the things that it is doing. So waiting season, a season of waiting, God's waiting you may look like a punishment. You might actually feel like to say, oh, what's wrong with me? God, what have I done? or why is my life like this? Why do I have to wait? Everybody else prays and get the answers right away, but then I've been here. It's been 4 years, Lord. I've been waiting on you. I've done everything that I actually thought I could do, but then I'm still here. What have I done wrong? And usually when we're in a waiting season, it's like in a wilderness. It's like in a wilderness where the same way the devil led Jesus to a wilderness to tempt him. That's the same thing that happens to us when we're in a waiting season, because this is where the devil will like come and say, oh, see, you're waiting on God. God is not helping you. Why not just try and seek help yourself for something? Or come and torment you to say, oh, it's because you sinned. You're the greatest sinner in the world. That's why you're waiting. If you weren't a sinner, God would have answered you since, but look. But then that's not true. So waiting, God's waiting room, a waiting season, is not a punishment or a curse. It might look like a wilderness. It might feel like a wilderness, but it is not. It is actually an invitation for more, for increase, for enlargement, for greater things. Most times when we're waiting on God, we just look at the situation the way it is like now. We forget that God knows the plans he has for us. His plans for us are from now unto eternity. So he sees a larger picture. It's easy for us to just be stuck to the situation right now and just be like, oh, you know what? Oh, things will always be like this. Oh, there's something wrong with me. Oh, maybe our generation is cursed. Or maybe the curse is too hard to break, because why else is God not answering me? But then we forget that God has a bigger picture, and that he has reasons. Every time we pray, God always answers our prayers. Just because he hasn't answered right away doesn't mean that he hasn't answered. Most times when he's actually taking time to actually answer our prayer is because he has something bigger. He has something greater in store for us. But because we're only focused on the now, it's hard for us to actually see a bigger picture. For example, the story of Abraham. God actually told Abraham to say, I'll bless you. I'll make you a blessing to many nations. But then for him to actually become a blessing to many nations, he had to wait. He had to wait for close to, 40 years before he actually had a child of his own. So he only had a son when he was 100 years old. If God did not understand the waiting process or the ways of God, he would have actually been living sad and in anguish and frustrated to say it doesn't make sense. But because he knew that if God has said it, then he will actually do it. He knew the God that he was actually serving. He knew that if God has given him a promise, then it will actually come to pass. It's not like he is a man who says it and just like leaves it there. And the reason why Abraham had to wait is because this blessing was actually bigger than him. It was a God-sized dream. It was a God-sized dream. It was actually a blessing, or a blessing that God wasn't only giving to him, but was also giving to like the rest of the nations of the world. So it had to, the same way as a mom, right? As a mom, when your child is hungry, and then you say, I'm gonna give you food, but then I'm cooking it. You cannot just give your child food that is not cooked. You cannot just like get chips and peel it and just give them to say, oh, since you're very hungry, here you go. You have to like cook it. You have to either boil it or actually fry it in oil until it is actually done. No matter how hungry that child is, you not give him something that is like half done. You have to wait until it is actually well cooked before actually serving the food. That is the same thing with God. You're trusting him for increase. You're trusting him for a car. You're trusting him for a new job. He cannot just give you the car or the blessing that you want when you're not prepared to actually receive it. And that's the whole reason why he puts us in waiting rooms. He wants to ensure we're ready. He wants to ensure we're prepared. He wants to ensure we have the skills, we have all the requirements that we need to actually step into all that he's calling us, or step into the next level that we are actually praying to him about. So God uses our seasons of waiting to actually draw us closer to him. Jeremiah 33 verse 3 says, call to me and I'll answer you. I'll tell you marvelous and wondrous things that you could never figure out on your own. Sometimes we actually get to levels where we're like, oh, I've read my Bible from Genesis to Revelations. I've attended seminars. I've attended this. So I think I've arrived. So when you get to that place, you actually forget that you can never get to the end of God, that there's always more in God. There's always more in God. So when we get to places like this, God will use waiting seasons, will use waiting rooms to actually draw us closer to himself. Or sometimes we're actually trusting God for things, and then we get so engrossed in this prayer point, prayer request that we actually wanted to manifest in our lives, that we take our eyes off Jesus, we take our eyes off God and focus on the prayer request, focus on the blessing that we want God to give us. So he will cause us to wait so that we shift our gaze back to him. He will draw us closer to himself, because he's not only interested in blessing us, giving us the blessing, he's interested in actually fellowshipping with us, because that's what he created us for. He created us to fellowship. He created us to be in oneness with him, the same way Adam was walking with God in the garden. Every day he would walk in fellowship with God in the garden. That's what God wants for us. So in as much as he wants to bless us, he also desires in actually having us as his friend, having us close to his heart. So he will use this season to actually draw us closer to him, because he wants to show us great and mighty things. There are things that he wants us to know. There are places he wants us to walk in. There are gifts that he wants to give us, but then we are so focused on other things that we're not listening. So he will use seasons of waiting to actually shift our attention, to actually draw our attention to say, you know what, there's more. The same way with Abraham. If Abraham had just left from the land he was in before and went to the land that God was actually calling him into, and then had a child right away, he wouldn't have become an intercessor where he would actually intercede for his cousin, like his nephew Lot, or intercede for the Sodom and Gomorrah, or even grow to be the person that he grew to become, a person of faith, a person of patience, a person of love for God, a person who was fellowshipping with God, a friend of God. He wouldn't have become a friend of God if God had just given him a son right away to say, okay, now you've stepped into the land that I promised you. Here you go. Here's your son. And then I'll bless you with everything else so you're all right. God allowed him to wait, because his heart had to be pruned, his heart had to be shaped, his faith had to be tested and increased and enlarged, and then his dreams as well had to be increased, because for him, he just thought to say, oh, I'll just have a son, I already have wealth, I'm already wealthy, and that's it. But God had to shift his imagination. He had to give him a God-sized dream to say that, you know what, as many as the stars in the sky, that's how many children you're going to have. That's the amount of nations I'm actually going to give you. So as you draw closer to God in this waiting season, God uses this season to actually prune you. He will remove all the bad characters, all the things that are not aligning with your next level. If it's maybe anger issues, if it's impatience, if it's anger problems, if it's a bad character, if it's self-righteousness, he will use these waiting seasons to prune you. And as he's pruning you, he's shaping you and molding you into the person that he wants you to become. So as you're drawing closer to him, because we know that every time we draw near to God, because God is so righteous, every time we draw near to him or we read his word, it actually exposes the things that are not right within us, or the things that we actually need to look like. So the same way as we all have our friends, right? And then the friend that you're actually closest to, you pick on one thing or the other. So if your friend likes to shop, you actually learn shopping through this friend. So it's the same thing with us. If we draw closer to God in these waiting seasons, he prunes us. He uses these waiting seasons to prune us, to shape us, to transform us. refine us, and prepare us for more. So the example of Abraham, where he had to wait, so God was pruning him, because we remember that Abraham actually was a liar. He would lie to the kings to say, oh, Sarah is my sister, so that the kings shouldn't like kill him. And he was afraid as well. So God was using this waiting season to like remove that fear, remove the inferiority, remove the lies, shape him into this great nation, this ancestor of great nation that God was actually like promising him. So as we wait, God is pruning us. He's shaping us, he's transforming us, he's refining us, and he's preparing us for more. He's preparing us for the next level. He's preparing us for the blessing. Because, for example, if you're asking God for promotion, to say, oh God, I'm tired of this level, I want you to promote me, I want to be supervisor of these people. If God just decides to say, okay, you're going to be supervisor today, when you don't have patience, how will you actually lead the people that you're supervising if you have no patience? You end up screaming at everybody, and everybody will just be, afraid to even approach you. They'll just regard you as, ish, that mean boss. So instead of this blessing that you're trusting God for to become a blessing, it'll actually become a curse. Why? Because you're not prepared, you're not ready, you're not fit, you're not refined, you're not shaped to be able to coordinate or to be able to step into this role that you are trusting God for. So he will cause you to wait. While you're waiting, he is preparing you by telling you to say, okay, you're impatient. So learn to be patient, because waiting requires us to be patient. So the patience that you're using to wait is the patience you actually need for your next level. The grace you're using to enjoy this waiting season is the same grace that you require for the next level, for the season of abundance. The love, the fellowship that you're fellowshipping with God that you're using in this season is the same that you actually need for the next season. So waiting may look like a setback or a delay, but it is actually a preparation for your greatest advancement. It's just like using a slingshot. When you're using a slingshot, you have to like actually pull it backwards. You actually have to like use it.
Okay, only table.
So yes, using a slingshot is you have to like pull it, you have to like put the stone and then actually pull it backwards and then release the stone. And then when you actually pull it backwards like that, the stone actually goes higher than just like using it when it's not like pulled back. So that's the same thing with like waiting. Like when you're in God's waiting room, when you're in a waiting season, it's not a setback or a delay. It's not a curse. It's not that like there's something wrong with you or you missed an instruction. Sometimes it might be that we missed an instruction, but then most times God is just working on you as you're waiting, because waiting is not like nothing is happening. There's something happening behind the scenes. There's something happening inside of us, because we need to be ready inside before we actually transform on the outside, because there's no need to actually like transform on the outside when in the inside you're still full of fear, you're still full of insecurities, you're still impatient, you're still angry, you're still bitter, you're still unforgiving. All these things will actually hold as a curse, as a barrier for you to enjoy the blessings or the next level that God has in store for you. So I'll give an example of King David. King David was anointed as king, but then instead of him going to the throne, he went back to actually taking care of God's sheep, of his father's sheep. And in this case, you'll actually be wondering to say, but then God, you've anointed me, you've anointed me, I'm king. Why am I going back to looking after the sheep? It's because David, one, was young. So his age would have actually been a hindrance. Two, he had no experience of being king. He was never a soldier in the king's army. He had no experience at all. So if he just walked into the step of a king, he would have messed up the whole thing. So God used that waiting season of him going back to take care of his father's sheep as his training ground. He trained him by making him to actually wrestle against to fight against the bear and the lion just to protect the sheep. As he was taking care of the sheep, he developed that heart where the sheep weren't only just ordinary sheep to him. They were like his children. He was taking care of them, taking care of them with everything that he had. He had to ensure that everything is okay, everything is right with this sheep. Everything is set. They are protected, they eat enough, they have everything that they need. And it was the same kind of heart that he actually needed to take care of God's people, because the children of Israel were had the same characters of sheep. They were just following blindly. They were just doing things blindly. They were just like, following the group. If somebody starts going astray, the rest of them are going astray. So he needed the patience, he needed the skills, he needed the experience for him to actually be able to function in the role that God had in store for him. So as we wait, we actually have to know that as we're waiting, it's not like God is punishing us. God is just preparing us. We may not see the preparation because they're actually deep inside us. They're actually behind the scenes. It's not things that a lot of people will actually be able to point out to say, oh, the reason why this one is not experiencing this is because of this. They will not be able to know. And because they'll not be able to know, a lot of people will not be able to understand, but you know, because it is actually God working in you as you wait. So the next question is, are you waiting on God, or is God waiting on you? So as I said before, waiting doesn't mean that we're doing nothing. It's about trusting that God is working behind the scene and allowing him to work on you. Waiting means complete surrender and trusting God to work on you as you wait. So the reason why I ask this question to say, are you waiting on God, or is God waiting on you? Waiting seasons are in two sections. It's either you're actually waiting on God, meaning that you're doing all that God is actually requiring you to do in a waiting season. For example, there are other waiting seasons where God will actually tell you to just rest. Don't do anything. Just rest and love on me. Just rest and fellowship on me. Just rest and enjoy my presence. Watch movies. And if you're somebody who's used to being busy all the time, this will be hard, because you wrestle with God. Instead of just surrendering to say, okay, God, have your way, work in me, you'll be telling God, but God, I cannot just sit down now. I cannot just rest. I cannot just do this. There's this to be done. There's this. I need to do this. I need to do that. But then what God is expecting you to do is just rest. Rest. But you'll be like, oh, but then there's a deadline. I need to have this money by this date. God, are you sure? Are you sure? When God is just telling you to rest, the reason why he's telling you to rest is because he has made the provisions available for you. And the only way you'll be able to see these provisions is if you actually rest in him. Because in resting in him, you'll be able to hear what he is saying. So most of us, we try and help God by using James 2 verse 17 as an excuse to say, oh, faith without works is dead. So God, I cannot just rest, because by just resting, I'm not working. So this money has to be paid. So maybe let me call this one, let me call that one. God, remember last time I actually prayed about this same amount and you actually use this one to bless me. So maybe I need to send a message to this person. Maybe this is who you're going to use to bless me. When in a sense, you're actually helping God. You're actually helping God, because if he is telling you to rest, all you have to do is rest. Because resting is also working. As you're resting, you're trusting God. Because it's not easy to just come to that point where you're just like, okay, God, I'm just going to trust you and sit down and rest and do nothing. Because as humans, we always have that consciousness. And The devil even come and attack your mind to say, how can you just sit down like this when there's a deadline? It's at the end of this month. How can you just be watching Netflix like this? You're not using your faith. Go on and use your faith. But then by you actually just sitting down and say, okay, God, if you're saying we should sleep, I should watch movies. That's exactly what I'm going to do. That is work on its own. That is you showing to say, this is my faith, Lord. You've told me to rest. So by my faith, I'm using that. I'm using my faith to actually fulfill the words that you've told me, the instruction that you've given me. I'm doing them. I'm resting. I'm surrendering it all to you, knowing that you will provide. So there's a difference between being lazy and resting. Being lazy is not asking God what to do next. It's just giving up to say, oh, when he wants to do it, he will do it. Resting is where you've gone to God, you prayed, and you've gotten actually confirmation to say, God says rest, and you rest. So in moments where we are fighting with God, we're trying to help him, we're trying to say, oh, faith without works is dead. So I would try and ring up every number that I have until I find this money. God will wait on you to get to that point of rest. That's why I asked, are you waiting on God or is God waiting on you? Waiting on God means that you've actually gone to God and he's given you an instruction and you're walking in that instruction. You're waiting on him to fulfill his promises. But then while you're waiting, you're actually doing the things that God has told you to do. The other question of whether God is waiting on you is where you're kicking and screaming through the waiting season. You're fighting and you're not obeying instruction. God is telling you to rest. God is telling you to wait. God is telling you to just seek him or sit at his feet, and you're kicking your way out to say, God, I cannot just sit down. I cannot just sit down. I need to do this. I need to do that. I need to do this. I need to do that. But so God will actually wait on you to get to that point of rest. He will not force things on you. He will not just break your legs and say, sit down. No, he'll wait on you because he's such a perfect gentleman. He'll wait on you to get to a point of rest. And most times for us to get to this point, we're exhausted by the time we get to that point of rest. Instead of just resting from the start, we kick away, we scream away. And then when we actually realize to say, okay, God just needs me to just trust in him. So by the time we get to that place, we're exhausted, we are tired. We're tired, we're exhausted, and then that's when we actually just get to that place of surrender and allow him to do it in his own time. But then by the time we get to this place, because we've been kicking and screaming, instead of like the waiting season to actually take lesser than it was supposed to be, it will take longer. Because God was waiting for us to get to the point of rest. So we're kicking, we're screaming, we're doing this, we're doing that. And God was just like, okay, I'll just wait on you because I can't work until you get to a point of rest. Because God, when he created the universe, he had to create every other thing and then create us as create Adam as the last thing, because he wanted us to operate in a realm of rest. His plan from start was for us to operate in a place of rest, in a realm of rest, in a place where we're just in complete surrender and everything has been provided. Everything is there. Everything is already available. He did not create us to actually seek our own answers, going around looking for help, going around looking for the answers, when the answers have already been prepared by him. So God will wait on you to get to that point of rest, that place of surrender, and allow him to do it in his own time and in his own way. Because most times we actually feel like, oh, just because he did it like this last time, that means we'll do it like this again this time. We're forgetting that the ways of God are not God's ways are not our ways. His plans are not our plans. Last time he might have sent your boss to give you money, but then this time around, it might you just be picking money from the floor, or miracle money just being lodged into your account. So, in as much God is a rewarder, God loves to bless his children. He desires in blessing us, in us living a fruitful, abundant life. He's more interested in our heart and character. than the blessing that he actually wants to give us. So even if you use all the words that you find in the Bible, all the promises that he has given you, or all the promises that you could find concerning that thing that you're trusting him for, if your heart is not right, or if your character is not right to receive that blessing, he will make you to wait. Because he's not a God who will just dash you blessing for the sake to say, oh, my child has actually prayed and he is a blessing. So because I'm a good God, I'm just gonna give her the blessing that she wants because I'm God. No. If your heart is not right, if your character is not right, he'll work on your heart, he'll work on your character until you're ready. Because God is not a God who will give you something that will actually corrupt you. He does not delight in giving you a blessing and then later on that blessing actually turns you around. You're a whole different person. Instead of you being a blessing to others, you actually turn into a curse where you're rubbing it on other people's faces to say, oh, I'm blessed, oh, I'm this. And he'll wait to actually, he'll prune you, he will shape you, he will refine you until your character is right. Until he knows that, okay, now you're ready. The same way as our children, when they cry out to say, Mommy, I want a toy, but then they're being rude, they're being disrespectful, and they're not listening to what you're saying. You'll not give them the toy that they want until you know that they've actually changed and they're good boys, or they're a good boy, a good girl. So that's the same thing with God. So as he's making you wait, it's not like he's punishing you, because God is a loving God. He loves us. He loves us he loves us enough to not just dash us something that will just like lead us back to darkness, lead us back to hell. He will not just give you a car, knowing that that car, because of the way you drive now, your driving is not right. And then if he gives you a car, you end up getting into an accident or you break a leg, and then you come back to him and be like, oh God, why did you give me that car? Or he'll wait for you until your driving skills are right, until you can drive and not get into an accident, and you can reverse right without hitting the wall or hitting another person's car. So as we're waiting, we should have all this in mind to say, waiting is a preparation. Waiting is God shaping us. Waiting is God pruning us. Waiting is God working on our character. He's also building us. He's giving us spiritual muscles for the next level that he actually wants to take us to. So now it's time for a story. It's time for gist. So as I said in the beginning that this year I actually just realized that God has actually taken me through cycles and cycles of waiting season, different waiting seasons. And it's only this year that I actually got to find out why. Because it's in my waiting season, it's in my waiting cycle that he actually gave me this vision of Zuka arise and told me the instructions that I need to be doing, and the mission and the vision for this platform. So I'm so grateful to God. So I have different stories, and I was actually asking Holy Spirit, I'm like, okay, which waiting story do you actually want me to share? So I'll share a story of what I went through 4 years ago. Because as I said in the beginning of this webinar, that for me, this webinar is actually like a full cycle moment. It's actually God showing me to say that everything that I went through for the past 4 years was actually leading me to such a time as this. So 4 years ago, okay, I'll start a year before then. So I came to Ireland in 2014. For me to come to Ireland, that was like a waiting season on its own, because the ticket that I bought it from this man who actually sold me for like a discount, and then turned out that this ticket was actually bought using 419. So it was actually like they scammed somebody they scammed somebody's ATM card and actually used it to actually purchase the ticket. Give me a minute. So the day that I was actually supposed to leave for Ireland, everything was set. I was checking in, and then all of a sudden they actually said, "Oh, I need to actually report to the Kenyan Airlines office." I went there, and then they were like, "Oh, you can't proceed because your ticket was bought using fraud money and all that, so it has been cancelled, so you cannot proceed." And I was like, oh God, but then what did I do? You know, I called the person, and the person was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't know. Don't worry, we'll arrange another ticket. By evening you'll be leaving." And that's how evening turned to the next day turned to a week turned to a month, a month turned to months. So I was supposed to leave in February. I ended up staying until June, and it was hard because you know how like when you're going abroad, everybody has heard about it, and then they're seeing you return, and then everybody's laughing to say, "Oh, maybe they deported her or something." And I wasn't patient enough. I tried every way I could to actually find money to leave for Ireland. I tried everybody that I thought of, everybody I could think of. Everybody kept on saying, "Oh, they don't have money." I called this person every single day, morning, afternoon, evening. And then he was like, "Oh, it's not me. My brother has an agency, a traveling agency in Canada. It's him who bought it. Now he's not picking up my phone. I don't even know what to do." And then this person ended up just switching off his phone. So I was stuck. And then I was asking God, but then God, you assured me that this is your will for me. I'm supposed to travel. So what's going on? You know, I was frustrated. I tried every means I could. I even told God, okay, I'm just going to apply for a job and find money to just like maybe once I work for like 2-3 months, I'll be able to like find money for ticket, because everything was already set. I had paid for my school. I had my, back then we didn't need a visa. I had everything required. Everything was set, but it was just this ticket. And then I'll be frustrated. I'll be crying every day. I'll be praying. And then it seemed as if God is not hearing me. I reached an extent where I said, "Oh God, you're a scam. You don't exist. Maybe all these people who say there is no God, they're actually right, because why else are you not answering me? You're just there. How can you be watching me crying?" And then the whole neighborhood is actually mocking me to say that, "Oh, what was I thinking? Did I actually think that I can actually live for abroad and all that?" So I'll cry myself to bed every day. There was a time I was just stuck inside the house. I didn't want to leave. I was just like watch movies all day, and then I just got frustrated. And then there was just a day I just decided to write. So I wrote a letter to God, and I wrote a letter, and I just wrote everything that I was feeling. I was like, God, I just thanked him for my life, for how far he's brought me. I thanked him for the process, for the money that was available to pay for the school and everything else, all the processes that I actually went through, that it was easy. And then I thanked him for his experience, because I didn't understand what was going on, but then I just trusted to say that he had a bigger plan. So I just said, okay, so this is me surrendering to say, I've tried everything that I could and it didn't work. So I'm just gonna lay it at your feet. And I'm sorry for saying that you don't exist, because I know that you do. And I know that the plans you have for me is good. If it's your plan for me to stay, I'll stay. Just lead me to my next level. Just tell me what I need to do, and then that's it. So I wrote the letter to God, and then I sat down outside. I remember that time I had no, like, I didn't really know that you can actually have like conversations with the Holy Spirit, but then I just like to talk to God out loud. So I sat outside, and then there was like a full moon. So I was looking at the full moon and just like pretending, like in my head, I was just having a conversation with God to say, I'm sorry I yelled at you. I'm sorry I screamed. I'm sorry I was mean, but then I'm just surrendering to you. Just tell me what to do. And then I said, "Oh, I wrote a letter to you. I don't know how I can actually reach to you." And then I just heard something say, "Oh, get a lighter and set the letter on fire. That's how it will reach me." And then I'm like, oh, why not just send the wind to actually blow the letter and then it will reach to heaven? And then he just said, trust me. So I took a lighter and then I set the letter on fire. And then that was just me arriving at my point of rest. And then I rested. So I was watching movies, I was going about living my life. I had my joy back. I wasn't frustrated anymore. I wasn't trying to help God. I wasn't trying to look for the next possible solution. I was just at rest. And that's how in a moment of rest, one day I woke up lazy. I didn't feel like doing anything. So I hadn't showered. I just sat down. I remember, I think it was a public holiday. So my mom was there. And then I just realized that we had like visitors. So the person who bought the ticket for me was a friend of this guy that I used to date. It was a friend of my ex's brother. Yeah. So I saw a car like park, and then my ex and his brother and his dad walked into the house, and then I had to run outside because I was like, oh my God, what is going on? You know, I hadn't showered. What are these people coming to do? In my head, I was like, oh, maybe the next level that God wants for me is that maybe I should get married. So these people are actually coming to talk about engagement and all that. And then they arrived, and then they were talking to my mom, and then my mom called for me, and then that's how they were like, oh, my ex's brother felt bad to say that it was actually his fault that I had been scammed. So he felt led to say it is only right if he actually like gives me back the money. And then when this person who had scammed me sorts it out, you actually give it back to him. And then in that moment, I was so overwhelmed because I had already canceled out to say, I'm not gonna leave again. God's will for me is for me to stay. Maybe he has a purpose for me in Malawi. So the way God did it, the money was given to me that day. By the end of that day, we had already arranged for another ticket. We had already started packing. The next 2 days, I left in the next 2 days. So to me, it was Psalms 126 to say, when the Lord turned around the captivities of Zion, we're like them that dream. Because to me, it was a dream come true. I didn't expect it. I had given up, you know. I had just come to that point of surrender to say, okay, God, this is me. I'm surrendering to you. I don't know what you have planned, but then just take the way. So I bought the ticket the same day, and then I left in 2 days. And then this flight that we had actually booked, I was supposed to stop in Ethiopia and then stop in Germany and then come to Ireland. So in Ethiopia, I was stopping for the night, and I was supposed to sleep in a hotel. And I slept in a 5-star hotel for the first time in my life. In fact, I did not sleep. You should see the way I was jumping from. It was like a 5-year-old child, you know. I was like, oh my God, like this is too. In fact, I felt like I was actually dreaming. It felt too good to be true, because just 3 days ago, I was crying to God to say, oh, you're not answering me. What is going on? You know, you're not there. And then I just reached to that point of surrender. And then the next 2 days, I had gotten into a plane. In fact, on the plane, I kept pinching myself. Because I was like, if this is a dream, God, I'll be angry. I'll be upset. I'll be angry. And then, so I was just there. And then I got in a 5-star hotel. Before I got to my room, they actually said, oh, you have to actually like go eat. So there's a buffet. And that was my first time eating a buffet. So there was like so many food. I was like, oh God, no, like this can't be true. And I was trying all the food, even the food that I've never seen, I ate that day. I ate everything. And then I went to the room, and it was like this big room with like a nice view of the city. I couldn't even sleep. Like, I was just overwhelmed. I was like, God, like, I don't even deserve this. After all that ranting that I did. And then you actually just had to honor your word. You just had to actually exceed my expectation. So I'll sleep on one side of this bed, and then I'll roll over to the next, and then I'll wake up, and then I'll go to the bathroom. I'll just go round. And then I'll just be like, oh, you know what? I feel like I'm dreaming. And then there was Wi-Fi. So it was my first time seeing a place that has free Wi-Fi, and I was downloading movies, I was streaming movies. I called my mom, I called her on video, I was showing her the room. I didn't sleep. I didn't sleep because of the excitement. I didn't sleep because I was nervous as well to say, oh, what if I actually miss the plane? And then the next day I got on a plane to Germany. I got in Germany. I passed through Germany. I had to wait. I had to wait for a flight. I waited for a flight, and then I got to Dublin airport, and then they had to like allow everybody else to walk in, and then they left me to be the last person, and they asked me questions. I was nervous. I answered the wrong things, but by the grace of God, they just said, you know what, it's late, you're tired, welcome to Dublin. And that's how I got in this country. And I remember my auntie's friend, when she saw me, she just broke down in tears because the immigration officer had called her to say, oh, I'm sending her back. She's not going to come in. And she was thinking to say, oh, this child has already gone through a stress of waiting. And then now she has to go back. Imagine the money that she spent. And I walked in and I just broke down and just cried because the whole journey for me was just, it was just supernatural. It was just God showing me to say, you know what, when you trust me, when you surrender to me, I perfect all things. And then a day later, that's when I actually understood why God had to allow me to wait, why he didn't allow me to actually come here in February. Because the same date that I actually arrived in this country was the same date that my aunt's friend had actually gotten a job as a carer, so, which meant she was leaving her old job as a childminder. So she was leaving her old job and going to start a new one. And because she was leaving, and the woman who was like her employer had nobody to actually like fill in her space. So she had actually asked her to say, oh, do you have anybody who can actually come and actually start work? And my auntie was like, my aunt's friend was like, oh yeah, I have my niece who had just come from Malawi. She's really good. She'll take care of your children, so she can actually come start. So I arrived in Dublin on Thursday, and on Sunday, I started this new job as a childminder. At first, I didn't understand what God was doing. To me, it was just like, oh, why have I just arrived in a country and just gone straight to working? I didn't know that this was actually God providing for me, because he knew to say that when I get in this country, I need money, I need provisions, I need to make a living. So the first week I was complaining, oh God, I don't like it. All these children are stressful. Oh, how can you bring me here to just be taking care of children? But then towards the week when they gave me my first payment, it was 150 euros, because I was being paid 30 euros per day. So at the end of the week, it was 150 euros. And I sat down and I looked at that money, and I was converting it to Malawian kwacha, and I put my hands on my head. I was like, Jesus. I was like, so God, you had to allow me to go through a waiting season, because not only did you actually want me to just come to this country, you wanted to ensure that everything that I need is there. Everything that I need is there, that I do not lack. I do not become a burden to somebody else, that I just go straight from home and straight to like having my own money and be able to actually send money home, be able to buy new things, be able to take care of myself, be able to just adapt to this new life that you actually brought me into. And in that moment, it just like, dawned on me to say, you know what, you don't wait on God in vain. God doesn't make you to wait in vain. He allows you to go through all those processes for a reason, because he allowed me to be patient, because I needed that patience to actually take care of those children. Because if I had just come into the country and then gotten a job like that, though, I would have actually, I would have been angry and I would have done something to those children. But then he allowed me to be patient. He allowed me to be gentle. He had to work on me. He had to refine me. He had to shape me into where he was actually taking me to. And plus, moreover, he had to get me to a point of rest so that I'll be able to trust him, because of the way he did it, because of the way my trip to Ireland was like, I'll always have to fall back on that memory to say, if you did it before, you always do it again. So I know whenever I'm staying in this country, I know that I can never lack. I can never lack, because if at that time God actually made a way for me, in that way. He'll surely make a way for me again and again because he did it before. So I always have that to fall back on, to say, he made me wait. And that waiting wasn't in vain. So this time around, again, if I'm waiting, I know that my waiting will not be in vain. I know that I'll not just wait and then end up, frustrated. You always show up. So as you're waiting, it may not make sense, but then once you get to that point of surrender, that point of rest, and just say, God, all of you and none of me, have your way, work in me. That's when everything will fall into place, and you see the bigger picture to say, oh my God, I didn't know that you were actually making me wait for this. I didn't know that you were actually preparing me for such a time as this. At that moment, I felt that God was punishing me. I felt that, oh, there's a curse maybe on my family. My village people are at it again. They've actually intercepted the networks and actually caused this ticket to be cancelled and all that. But then what I didn't know is that God had actually had a bigger picture, because his word says that I know the plans that I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, to give you a future filled with hope, to give you an expected end. So his plans for us are good. If he's making us good, we should learn to see the good in the waiting. We should learn to see God, even in our waiting season, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's stressful, even if it's not a place that you're used to. Learn to see God in that situation. Learn to see God in the waiting season. Learn to embrace the waiting season, to just allow him to work on us, because what he has in store for us is bigger. Where he's taking us it's a larger place. It's bigger than where we are. So we need to be ready. He needs to prune us. We need the right character. We need the right gifts. We need everything, every skill and every requirement that for us to actually handle the blessing. Because if I did not wait, I wouldn't have even taken this job. I would be like, oh no, I can't write. I can't work as a mind. I can't work as a child minder. I can't do that. But because he had to humble me, he had to prune me, he had to empty me of self. So when I got to this place, I was like, you know what? I choose to see the good. I choose to be grateful. I choose to count my blessing, because back home, I didn't have any means of making money. I didn't have this money that I'm actually getting now. I wasn't earning this, and I can't just pick it on the road. So Lord, I'm grateful. So we should learn to see God, even in the little things, even in our waiting season, even when it feels like we are stuck, even when it feels like nothing is going on. We should know that God is working behind the scenes. He's working on our character. He's working on our heart. He's also working on where we are going. He's aligning everything. He's aligning everything because he wants everything to be ready. He wants everything to be prepared, everything to be well cooked before you actually received it. He's not a mean God who will not just give you a half-baked thing, and then after you start enjoying it and it's broken, you come back to him and be like, oh God, but then why did you give me this if you actually knew that it's gonna be broken? It's gonna be, something that I actually need to return to you. So yes, the waiting season is a blessing in disguise. You might not see the bigger picture, but once we get to the end of it, we'll actually thank God, to say, God, I thank you for making me wait. So how do we wait? There are two, on Google, there are two definitions of waiting. Waiting is the action of staying where one is or delaying action until a particular time or event. And it is also the action or occupation of working as a waiter or waitress. So in your waiting season, you may choose to stay where you are and delay the action by kicking and screaming, by complaining, by comparing yourself to others, by being bitter, by being resentful, by being angry at God, by going back to the world. Or you might choose the better option, which is to work as a waiter or a waitress. And what does a waiter or waitress do? You serve God, you save people, you save your community. So how do we wait? We sit at the feet of Jesus. We fellowship. I believe 2020 is actually a perfect example of how to wait, because God has actually taught us how to wait perfectly, because he just locked us all inside. And we had no option. We had no any other option rather than to just obey his instructions, to just sit at his feet, to fellowship, to work on what he has been telling us to do all this while, to take time to rest, to enjoy, to see life in a different realm, in a different lens. So as we wait, we sit at the feet of Jesus. We learn from him. The same way, was it Mary or Martha who sat at the feet of Jesus? Because it's from sitting at this feet of Jesus that we actually receive the instructions for our next level, receive the instruction on how to get out of this waiting season. So we fellowship with God. We draw closer to him, and we know that if we draw closer to God, we become like him. We take our eyes off the situation, take our eyes off this request, this prayer request, this expectation, and just fix your eyes on Jesus. As we wait and sit at the feet of Jesus, what we're doing is we're seeking first the kingdom of God and all its fullness, knowing that every other thing shall be added unto you. So even if you've been in a waiting season for 6 years, the moment you just take your eyes off the situation and focus on Jesus, God will just will just speed up the process. He'll just accelerate the time. He'll just cause everything to just align, because this is the same thing that happened to me when I just fixed my eyes on Jesus and took my eyes off the situation and stopped bothering people to lend me money. I just focused on having a fellowship with God. That's when God just sent people to say, you know what, my daughter has to leave. She has to leave before the end of June. So just go, just go, just go. And that's how I left. So while you're waiting, sit at the feet of Jesus, fellowship, take your eyes off the situation and fix your eyes on Jesus. Serve God, save men, learn, help others, be a blessing to others. Because we know that when Job was in his waiting season, after he had lost everything, God told him to pray for his friends. And then when he prayed for his friends, he was restored. So as you wait on your own thing, let's say you're trusting God for marriage, and as you wait for God to do your own, help others plan their own marriage. Help others pray for their own spouse. Help others who have like broken marriages. Pray for them, intercede for them, encourage them. As you're waiting God for a car, pray for those who have a car. Pray for those who have a car. Intercede for others. Bless others. Be a blessing. Sow seeds. Look for platforms that can actually increase your knowledge, increase the revelation. If you want a promotion, book for a course, into a course to actually increase your skills. Work on yourself, become a better person. If you're trusting God for children, take care of other people's children. Be hopeful, be joyful, be expectant. Embrace this day. Don't just like wake up and be like, oh, here we go again. Oh God, if you do not do this today, I don't know. I don't want to wait. I don't want to get out of bed because you didn't do it. I told you to do it yesterday. You didn't do it. No, be expectant. Each day, embrace the day and be like, this is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. God, I'm expectant. Choose to see God even in the little things. You are alive, you're breathing, you're strong, you're healthy, you have a sound mind. You have opportunities laid before you. You have the opportunity to be a blessing to somebody. You have money, you can actually be a blessing to somebody else. Be expectant. Count your blessings. Don't just complain and be like, oh God, I'm waiting until you do this thing that I'm waiting for, then I'll be happy. Be happy before even the blessing comes. Praise God, worship him, dance, rejoice. Be expectant. Choose to see God in the little things. Choose to see God in the little things. Choose to see him in all things, good or bad. Choose to see him. Choose to see him. So lastly, I'll share Psalms 27 verse 14. It says, wait patiently for the Lord, be brave and courageous. Yes, wait patiently for the Lord. And Psalm 37 verse 34, it says, wait for the Lord and keep his way, and he will exalt you to inherit the land. You will look on the You look on when the wicked are cut off. And Lamentations 3 verse 25, the Lord is good to those who wait for him, to the soul who seeks him. And Micah 7 verse 7, but as for me, I'll look to the Lord, I'll wait for the God of my salvation. My God will hear me. God is not a man that he should lie. He will not just bring you this far to leave you halfway. He's not a wicked God who just starts something and leaves it halfway. He always completes what he started. He always completes what he started. So trust him, surrender, let go, and choose to see him. Fix your eyes on him. Seek first his kingdom, knowing that he will fulfill his promises. He will show up in ways that will actually blow your mind. So finally, you can follow us on our social media pages on YouTube, on Instagram, and on Facebook. So if you have any questions,